Good afternoon. This is Bob, and this is the Highway Podcast. Fun with all the eclectic nonsense that I tend to pander around on this channel. And today, I've got somebody who, well, we go back quite a long way through Muay Thai, our mutual love of Muay Thai. It's the author, recently wrote his book, which I'll put in the description box below, of Suck It Up and Go Home. A fascinating read, but we're going to talk about that more later. Because first, Simon, I just want to introduce you and say hi. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm very good. Thanks for the intro. Suck it up or go home.
Or
Not
go home.
go home.
Sorry,
or go
or
home.
go home.
You got a choice in the matter.
Well, yeah, or go home.
Or go home.
Did you suck it up and go home? No, you didn't. You stayed there.
Yeah, I sucked it up for 11 months in Japan. And then at the end of that period, after a couple of months extra in Tokyo, yeah. I did come home. But
so people are going to be intrigued because you mentioned Japan and Tokyo.
Yes.
But I introduced you as a Thai boxer. Whoa! So keep listening because we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about the book a little bit later. But I want to go back to, as they always do with these things, to go back to the beginning of, those same old questions. What set you off on the journey of martial arts?
Yeah. Okay.
What kickstarted that, Simon?
Yeah, I'm probably very similar to many other people who got into martial arts. At school, you get into fights, get into scraps, as we used to call them. I was a fairly unruly boy, I guess, and
right.
I ended up getting sent to boarding school.
Oh.
And back then boarding school was quite a tough place. I think it's not quite the same. In fact, I've been back to my old school a few years ago and it's very, very different indeed. But back then it was a pretty tough environment and there was a lot of bullying went on and I got bullied. I wasn't particularly strong, didn't know how to look after myself. I'd done judo very, very early on. I'd always pestered my mum and dad to let me do karate. They didn't want me to hit people. So they put me into judo. But I found that when I got into a confrontation, the natural response from a kid would be to punch me in the face, and I couldn't get close to use any of my judo. So I kind of suffered at school. There's one guy in my school called Adrian, who I talk about in the book, and he was a kung fu. I think he was a kung fu black belt. I don't know who he trained with, but I know that everybody in the school was terrified of him, even the prefects, and he was a year older than me. So we got the respect of everybody. And there's a couple of incidents that I had in his company where he demonstrated some stuff. And I thought, you know what? When I leave this school, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn martial arts. So I left that school at 16, went back home, started at a kung fu school, Laogar Kung Fu. So did that for a couple of years. But I found that the way I practiced that martial art was very traditional. And then when I did competitions, we'd fight in a completely different way. So we'd use the horse stance in the traditional type stuff. Then we turned sideways for the competitions. It was semi-contact. It usually felt like full contact, and I didn't do very well at that. So that was kind of my baptism into martial arts.
Just coming back to the Laogar. Yeah. Laogar made a real impact on the competition scene. I remember
it was massive.
Back at that period. Incredible.
Yeah, it was massive.
Because they were basically fighting other people, because Laogar is a fairly modern style of Kung Fu. It's based on some of the old ideas, obviously, but it was a very new modern thing. And I remember when it started developing in the Midlands, it's where it really started. And I remember them hitting the circuit, the semi-contact and the non-contact circuit, and they were just wiping people out. Established traditional systems of Kung Fu. And karate as it was.
Yeah, I mean, some of those guys, I did quite a few tournaments back in the day, semi-contact tournaments. Some of those guys, so fast, they kicked me in the head 3 times before I'd even get one shot off.
Yeah.
So I didn't do particularly well. But where I used to train in Stafford, next door to the Laogar Kung Fu school, it was in a recreation centre.
Oh, right.
Next door, as I was leaving, there were guys coming up the stairs in shorts, Thai boxing guys, going into this tiny little room. And I'd hear them as I left start their warm up and their practice, and I'd hear this banging, hitting pads. I'd hear all the noises you associate with a Thai boxing school, and all the grunting and all of that stuff. Yeah. And I thought, wow, Thai boxing. And I used to get Martial Arts Illustrated and Combat Magazine.
Oh yeah.
And Thai boxing was the thing you did if you wanted to do full contact. So one day I plucked up the courage and went into that class, and I was welcomed in by the instructor. I won't mention any names. Went in, got the gloves on, hit some pads. And at the end of the class, I think it was only an hour's class, I was invited to spar, given the fact this was my first ever Thai boxing class. And I ended up sparring with a guy who had a fight coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And basically, I was stood in this small room. The guy squared up opposite me, threw a left jab, right cross, hit me in the head with both shots. I bounced back, my head hit the wall, knocked myself out. And that was my introduction to Muay Thai. And I basically got left in that room. My friend was with me. He got one of the Kung Fu guys to come out and see to me. I went to hospital. I had a concussion. And then I realized that I had a decision to make, because I tried Thai boxing, but I hadn't really tried Thai boxing, Muay Thai as it should be taught. Yeah. So I could either quit and go back to Kung Fu, knowing that the Kung Fu that I'd learned didn't help me in that situation, or I should seek out somebody that could teach me Muay Thai properly. And that's when I referred back to Combat Magazine, Martial Arts Illustrated. And I'd read about this guy in Manchester, because it was all happening in the Northwest.
Yeah, of course then. It was, yeah.
You know, it was Master Sken, Master Toddy, various other people up there. But the guy that really interested me was Crew Tony Moore. Yeah. And what interested me about him was that he wasn't Thai, but he was going off to Thailand on a regular basis. He was learning from the Thais. He was taking fighters over there, and his fighters were having success. And I thought, I just had this feeling, you know, maybe it's fate, I don't know. Yeah. I thought, this is the guy that I need to learn Thai boxing from. So I plucked up the courage. I vividly remember this. It's back in the day where we didn't have mobile phones. You know, I didn't want my mum and dad to know what I was doing.
No, of course, because they don't want to do it.
No, they didn't want me to do it, especially after I got knocked out. So I was 19. I got the big long wire from the phone in the hall into the kitchen, and I rang up Tony, and I was terrified. I was terrified.
Did you understand him? Did you? You're all right. How's it going?
I knew he'd have a Mancunian accent, but I did understand him, because I was an hour and a half way down in Stafford.
Yeah, so. Of course, yeah.
Anyway, I vividly remember saying to him, I've read about you in the magazines. I'd like to come up to Manchester, and I'd like you to teach me how to kick, because Thai boxers have got the strongest kicks. And he said to me, well, you either want to learn Muay Thai or you don't. So I can't, he basically implied, I'm not going to teach you how to kick.
No.
Learn the system. And I hadn't necessarily appreciated there was a system to it, because you just saw fighters in the ring. So I went up to Piccadilly, picked me up at the station, took me to the Fighters and Fitness Centre in Clayton, had my first class, and my eyes were opened. My eyes were open. I probably trained 3 or 4 years in martial, 3 years in martial arts, and you know, I got no power. He invited me to kick the bag. I got no power. Punched the pads, they didn't even move. And I realized that this was the guy to teach me. So I trained then on a regular basis, every week, every 2 weeks, travel up to Manchester on the train, got picked up at Piccadilly, and trained with Crew Tony, which was, you know.
And of course, he's very much a traditionalist, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the discipline was incredible.
Yeah.
And I maybe didn't appreciate the importance of discipline back then. My time in Japan has definitely taught me about discipline.
Yeah.
But, you know, he was very strict. I remember I didn't train in many of his classes because I tended to do it privately. Yeah. But, you know, I have been in one of his classes. I remember that a guy turned up a couple of minutes late, and he sent the guy home because he was late. And that's, you know, I think that's as it should be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's what I was saying. You know, I was brought up with traditional karate originally, and exactly the same thing happened in the dojo. People would turn up, everybody responsible for cleaning the floor.
Yes.
Before we even start, and the gi had to be pristine. And Tony carries that same ethos across to Muay Thai, which I think is an important element that's missed in a lot of classes that I've seen Muay Thai.
Yeah, I think over the years, you know, back in the 90s, back in the late 80s, 90s, that was the golden era of Muay Thai.
Of course it was. Yeah.
You know, all the fighters were coming up. There were some really good camps. There was lots of competition between these camps, and people were traditional. You do the Ranmoy, you do the Wai Kru at the start of the fight. Yeah. And I think nowadays it's drifted, and people are teaching Muay Thai. They're not necessarily teaching the traditions. They're teaching more of a kind of kickboxing, MMA type style. And Muay Thai is different. Muay Thai comes from Krabi Krabong, Muay Boran. You know, it was honed on the battlefield. This is just the unarmed version the Thai national art, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's been sanitized, I think, over the years. But back then was an amazing time.
Well, I mean, I had a, just to echo that sentiment, I had a guy come in the gym. This was pre-COVID, so I think it was probably March, something like February, March. He came in, and he said, he actually said, "Oh, I've done a bit of Thai boxing before. You don't do that stupid dance thing, do you?"
Did you show him the door?
Oh yeah, I said
Yeah,
the stupid dance thing is around Muay and a white
Yeah.
crew, which is part and parcel of what we do. He said, "Oh well, I don't want to be learning that. I just want to learn to be able to fight." I said,
Yeah.
"Well, there's a gym just in Redditch. He's really good." And I'm turning business away because you're right. It's been sanitized. The Ramway is not given any credence. The traditions are not observed. I mean, I've still got a shrine in the gym.
Yes.
I mean, it's just part and parcel of it. It's part of the art, and the students who get it. And that's what they want. They want to be able to fight, but they also want to have the other aspects to it. The more ritualistic elements of it.
Yeah,
the spiritual elements of it.
Yeah, it's the whole system. There's a right and a wrong way to do stuff.
Yeah, and Tony embodies that, doesn't he?
Oh, I mean,
it's
amazing.
If you cut him in half, he'd have Muay Thai written.
Yeah, he, Crew Tony or Arjan Tony now.
Arjan Tony, yeah.
He lives and breathes Muay Thai. He's probably, I guess, I trained with him probably for 15 years, fairly consistently. It drifted a little bit at the back end. I think he's probably moved a bit more into Krabi Krabong now.
Yeah, he has.
Which I think was definitely his interest, and in fact, I think I talk about it in the book. As I was starting Muay Thai with him, he was starting Krabi Krabong. So both on a separate journey, albeit a similar journey.
Yeah.
So he was a massive influence. We're still in touch today. I've not seen him for quite a long time. I probably need to put that right at some point.
Yeah.
He's reading my book, so hopefully he likes what I put about him. And he introduced me because I lived in. I was born in Stafford.
Yeah.
Then I moved to Nottingham to go to university.
Yeah.
So he introduced me to Master Lek, who'd I
think a character.
Yeah. I think he'd recently come to the UK from Thailand.
Yeah.
And it was quite unusual, as you'll know, Bob, back in the day. If you train in one camp, you don't go and train in another camp.
No.
So I was a Sit Siam camp, and I started fighting by now. So I was a Sit Siam camp fighter. And suddenly I was training at Sinakhon Chai in Nottingham. So when I used to fight in competitions, I never quite knew who I was representing, but it didn't really matter because Tony and Master Lek had such a good relationship.
They're good friends, yeah.
And I was always very grateful for Tony allowing that relationship to happen, because what he did do, and what I think he's always done, he always puts his students first.
Yeah.
And I've certainly seen that over the years. And he put me first, and what's best for my student to develop his technique. Okay, I'll still train in Manchester, but closer to home, I can then be in an environment where I can spar with people. I can train more regularly. And Master Lek opened my eyes to the foundations I got from Tony were invaluable, because when I was thrown into a class with Master Lek had a very different teaching style.
Yeah.
So what used to happen sometimes, he'd demonstrate a technique, and everyone in the class would look around going, how do I do that? What just happened? And they come and ask me, because they knew I got a background where I understood the footwork, I understood the technical elements of it, so I could help break it down. Because the traditional Thai way was, well, watch what I do and copy what I do. And I think Tony recognized that in the West, our way of learning is we like to know, you put your foot here, you turn your hip over when you throw, that kind of stuff. So I kind of helped some of the other students get to grips with the techniques, and was with Master Lek probably for another 10 years. So I think I did about 25 years in Muay Thai altogether.
Yeah. I mean, Lek came over to my gym once to do a seminar, and
I think I was there.
Yeah, you were
possibly.
There. Yeah. I've got photographs of it somewhere. And do you remember he set up that elaborate shrine?
Yes.
Yeah, the massive shrine and everything, and we talked about it, and I thought, this is great. It's what I've been talking about. And now I've got somebody who's from Thailand coming in, they're just reflecting what I've already been teaching these guys. And everybody loved that session. Like you say, he's not the best teacher for Westerners, but my guys had already been well grounded in fundamentals, I think, most of them anyway. And they had a great experience. And it was like, when are you going to bring him back? That big Thai guy who keeps laughing. That's what they,
Yeah,
because he was a big
very
fella,
nice
wasn't
guy.
he? He was a tall, for a Thai,
Yeah,
very tall.
very big for a Thai. Very lovely man.
Oh,
But he never, in Nottingham, he's been in Nottingham for a long, he's back in Thailand now, but was in
yeah.
Nottingham for a long time. But sadly never had a full-time premises,
No.
and hugely respected by all the, the Thai
Oh,
masters up in the Northwest.
yeah.
But loved Muay Thai, never had a school, and kind of people came and they kind of went, and some of the discipline that was very evident at Sitsayam, which I love and I think is massively important,
Yeah.
it didn't quite translate to how we trained at Sinakonchai, Chai, which
Yeah.
was a more relaxed environment.
Sort of looser sort of structure.
Yeah, and we'd be training in, when I used to go to Sitsayam, to the Fighters and Fitness Centre, and then the gym moved to Ashton-under-Lyne. I trained there for a bit. You go to a place that you were familiar with. When you went in, you'd bow to the shrine. You knew that was your environment.
Yeah.
When you train Muay Thai in a leisure centre
It's
or a gym, and suddenly you find a gym that you like, and it's we train at a great place in Nottingham. It's Castle Gym. It's not Castle Gym. I can't remember what it was called, but it was near the castle. Castle Marina, near Castle Marina. It was a big gym, big ring, and it was fantastic. And then we had to move from there, and then we're in a different gym, and you're constantly wandering.
Yeah,
and it's very hard.
Yeah,
to maintain.
Well, you have to have a stable environment, don't you, in order to get things. Yeah, which is why I've always had my own gym. I've had my share of church halls and halls at the university and things like that. But I realized early on you need to have that place. And it people walk in and the association is, oh yeah, this is where we do Muay Thai. There's the ring, there's the shrine, there's the monkon, there's the robes, there's the first aid kit.
Yeah, you need that sometimes.
It has that atmosphere, doesn't it? Because it's become steeped in Muay Thai, because that's all we do there.
And you get a more committed student, because
totally. Yeah.
People, I used to travel to Manchester once a week. It'd take me door to door 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get there and back. And then you have some people that kind of moan to go 10 minutes down the road. Yeah. And if you're moving around, even within a city, it's amazing how people drop off because, we're there now, the parking's not so good, I can't quite get there on time. So we'd have this constant churn of students. And what makes a good Muay Thai school, apart from the instructor, apart from the environment, is a good collection of people that are all coming up together and pushing each other and challenging each other. We had some of that, and there was some hardcore students that were with Master Lek for a long time, including myself. But below that, there was a churn.
You have people drifting in and out. I think that's true of any gym. I mean, one of my guys who had a club down in Wales, and he's passed it on to somebody else now, Lee Stingemore. Lee was a great instructor. He trained with me for years. He used to come up to Birmingham to train with me, and then I qualified him, and he set up his own little place down, and it had a really successful, called Celtic Pride, and it's got a lot of good fighters down in Wales. And he was on Facebook one day, and somebody said, is your club any good, blah blah blah. He said, you've got to understand one thing, it's not a club, it's a camp. And the other thing, it's not about it being good, it's a family anyway.
Yes,
it's a family. And it's got all the idiosyncrasies of a family, all of the dysfunctional elements of a family. He said, we're one big family, so don't think you're just joining a club and you're paying your fees, you're joining a family. And that's the ethos I guess I've always had, because whenever I train in Thailand or trained with, alongside Tony Myers or with Tony Mua or Toddy, it was always a level of respect and discipline, and everybody, conformed to that because that was part of it. But there was always that element of we're part of a group, we're all on the same team, sort of thing, Yeah,
and it's I totally agree with you on that.
About Muay Thai being a solitary sport, and we were saying, well, it's not, is it? Because we all work to help that fighter win his fight. The cornermen are there to help him win his fight. The coach is there to help him win his fight. So yes, it might seem like a solitary sport, but if you think you're training on your own, you're not.
Yes,
we're all here to back you up.
I think you hit on an important point there, that I'd like to explore a minute and just explain what I think about it. Because you said that you don't just pay your money and train, and that's the difference between martial arts and a gym membership.
Yeah,
I think because the martial arts I've trained quite a few, as you know, Muay Thai, Aikido, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga.
Yeah,
you have a different relationship with a martial arts school and your martial arts instructor than you do when you go to the gym or you go and play football or you go and play tennis or whatever else, because there's that spiritual element, I believe, and there's that reciprocal respect. And in Japan, you know, the sensei-student relationship, it's the same in any martial art.
Yeah.
You know, the crew-student relationship in Muay Thai, it's the same in any martial art. And going back to what we said earlier, some of that is slipping, I think, because people now are training a bit here, training a bit there, training a bit somewhere else, and they're losing that longer-term relationship with a teacher, who is there as more than just a teacher. They're a mentor, they're a father figure, or whatever else. So I just thought I'd mention that.
What I've also noticed as well, Simon, you brought up that point about, you know, how the martial arts have changed now, really, and a gym membership is just a gym membership, and it's not being part of a group. I think with the rise of the mixed martial arts, and this is not like a dig at any specific groups or anything, because, you know, I know guys who fight in MMA and UFC who train bloody hard. And they're athletes in their own right. But I've in recent years, I've been getting quite a few young lads in the gym who've got quite an attitude on them.
Yeah.
And what the UFC's done, the bad part of it, I feel, is it's turned it into almost like a WWE type of thing. Look at me.
Yeah.
You know, I battered the guy. I'm going to kill you, and all of this sort of thing. And I've choked one or two people out of the club because of it. I've actually taken them one side to say, look, this attitude doesn't work in here.
Yeah.
You're not going to try and kill your opponent at the weekend. You're going to fight somebody who's working just as hard as you to fight. So you're not fighting. And that was for an interclub, you know, and I was like, you know, if you're taking that attitude to an interclub, we're all here to have a good time. Your opponent has put as much work in as you have. Enjoy it. Yeah. And at the end of it, you'll have made a new friend. Yeah. So if you don't leave this ego by the door, you're not coming in, you know.
Yeah. I think if you train in Thailand, I've trained in Thailand. You can be in a camp in Thailand, and you can be rubbing shoulders with the champion. You know, Lumpini champion or Rajadamnern champion.
Who's he? Oh, Samad Payakarun. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And they're the nicest, humblest people.
Absolutely.
And there's, you know, of course, in any sport there is some ego, but there's probably less. And I think when people watch MMA, and I think MMA is very good. Very good, because it has evolved martial arts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But when young lads who are getting influenced by watching certain people in that sport and how they behave and they try and emulate that, that's not what it should be. No. Because there are some egos. There are some egos. There are some great people, but there are some egos.
Yeah. And I know some of it's gamesmanship and psychology. It's part of the show, isn't it? It's part of the show. But obviously young guys don't get that yet. They're not at that level.
Yes.
They don't understand its gamesmanship in some cases.
Well, they've got to sell tickets. They've got to sell tickets to the show. And I think, you know, the UFC is the main body of mixed martial arts now. You know, when it was coming up, it's got to sell tickets on that basis because it's a new sport. Yeah. In Thailand, you don't necessarily need that because it's the national sport. And a bit like football here, people are going to go, they're going to support. Yeah,
it's part of their culture, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
People will go, even though they don't train, they'll go and see the fights. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
So you just to go back to the time, you're training with Tony and you're training with Lek, Master Lek.
Yes.
You obviously had quite a few fights in that period of time. I mean, you do talk about this in the book, but for those that are listening, I would say to those that are listening, go and buy the book because it goes into even more detail.
Thank you.
That's the first plug. How many fights did you have?
That's a good question. 9 fights in total.
Yeah, and you were a British champion?
No.
Oh, you didn't get a British champion? Did you win a title?
I won Northwest light middleweights.
Yeah.
And I won, it was either Midlands, I think it's West Midlands or Midlands. I think it was Midlands light middleweight title.
Right. Well,
I kind of run them back to back.
Yeah. I genuinely thought you'd had more than 9 fights, right? Because I don't know what, maybe it was that whenever I was judging or at a show, you were always there. So you always seemed to be there.
Yeah.
And I had this idea that you'd had 25, 30 fight. And I'm going to blow smoke up your ass now. I thought, when I first saw you fighting, I thought, wow, what a good technical fighter. Because, and I think, but that's down to Tony, isn't it? Tony Moore.
Oh, absolutely. Without Crew Tony, I would have been nowhere.
And this is why I thought you had a lot more fight.
Yes.
And this is what we try to get through to the students, isn't it? That, you know, the fundamentals are vital. And if you follow some of the old ways, that's the way you get better, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
basics.
Camus made one of my students walk for a week in front of a mirror. A week. Until he got it right. And then he moved him on to punching and kicking. But
I mean, so somebody walks into a Muay Thai gym, the first thing they want to do, they want to punch the bag or kick the pads. You know, I remember going up to Manchester, and before I do anything, you know, Tony would have me bouncing on a tractor tire, left foot, right foot, left foot, punching, shadow boxing, skipping, all of the basic stuff that when I went to Thailand, it was the same experience, which taught me footwork, taught me good foundations, good basics. I never wanted to fight though, Bob, to be honest. I never had when I started with Tony, I never wanted to fight. But shortly after I started with him, I went to Thailand, and I went more as a tourist, but I did a couple of days training at Carryboy Gym.
Carryboy, which is one of Tony's favourites, isn't it?
Yeah. And back in the day, you know, there was no Westerners there.
Carryboy is a bit rough.
Yeah, I mean, to find the place was a challenge in itself, and I had to take a photo of Tony and I. And that was my passport to get in. Otherwise, I couldn't train.
You wouldn't have got there,
No, I wouldn't have got in. So that experience, and then going to watch the fights at Lumpini in particular, I came back and I said to Chris Tony, I said, look, I want to fight now. If I'm going to understand Muay Thai, I get the culture, I get the spirit thing now. I want to fight, and that's when it started.
And that's where it all started.
Yeah, but I guess I have a regret. You know, I fought in free. I didn't fight that, although I was at all the shows for some reason. I didn't fight as frequently, and I didn't have this real burning desire to be a world champion, or I kind of just did it to get some experience. I do have a bit of regret that I never went for British champion, but I didn't fight regularly enough. And then I was at university, so I got all the other distractions of university.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You can't regret. You make decisions at a point in time in your life, but I would have liked to have got a bit further, probably.
Yeah, but I mean, it sort of got you on at least you were working with the right people. You know, you could have been somebody who, you know, ended up with like the first school you encountered.
Yes,
you know, with, you know, just what sounded to me like when I read it in the book, I thought, oh my God, that's terrible. You know, but you hear of it so often now.
Yeah.
You know, where the instructor is obviously less skilled than he should be.
Yes.
And doesn't understand what he's got, you know, doesn't understand what he's doing, and actually how dangerous this thing is.
But as you know, Bob, I got my revenge, didn't I?
Oh, you did, yeah, but
by accident. But
by accident. So we'll come to that now if you want. Okay.
You want me to tell the story?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I'd had a couple of fights. I think this was my third fight, and I went up to Sheffield. It was at one of the football clubs in Sheffield. I forget which one. And you know what it's like when you turn up for a fight. All the fighters turn up. They're parading around the changing room, or always used to be in these like ballrooms with carpet and that usually's got beer all over it.
West End carpets.
Never the best of
cigarette smoke.
Yeah, exactly, hanging in the air.
Yeah.
In fact, back then I think people did used to smoke around the ring.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I'm walking around the kind of weigh-in area, the doctor's area, and I see the instructor who taught the class when I got knocked out.
Yeah,
and I see probably his number one student, who was a lot taller than me, more experienced than me because he started before I started. And then you wait to get matched, and I'm fighting this guy, Paul. I'm like, oh no. And you get this little voice in your head that says you're going to lose. It's the same thing's going to happen again. But with Tony there, you know, he doesn't pander to those thoughts. He gives you the confidence to go in there and do the job. And that fight, although I didn't knock the guy out over 3 rounds, it was a C-class fight.
Yeah.
I punished him. And the best bit about it was that he tried to quit in the fight, and his instructor displayed how he displayed no care to me, basically.
Yeah.
Dragged him into the corner at the end. What are you doing? And all of this stuff. And it was kind of, it wasn't about getting victory over Paul, who I fought.
No.
But it was about getting victory over the demons of that day when I got knocked out, my first baptism into Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And also kind of showing the instructor in the other corner that actually, if you teach your students properly, this is what they're capable of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was down to the excellent instruction I got at Sit Siam.
Of course,
in
I'm
a very short period of time.
As you say, he doesn't.
Yeah, in a very short period of time.
Negativity or any of that sort of thing. Because
yeah,
I mean, you know, Tony in his own right was a great fighter. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And an old school, old style coach,
yes.
of which there are very few, I'm afraid now.
Yeah.
Very
yeah.
few.
Unfortunately.
We're all dying out now.
a dying breed.
You know, if you look at Tony's school, you know, world famous Sit Siam camp, you know, but hardly anybody knows who Tony is.
Yeah.
You talk to modern Thai boxers and they haven't even heard of him.
Yeah.
Because he's not out there blowing his own trumpet all the time.
No. But if you walk into his school, and if you were lucky enough, and I regard myself very lucky to have found him and to have trained there for so long, if you trained at that school, what you got from that school and seen a Conchai with Master Lek was something that I think it's very difficult to find now.
I think you're right. I see it very rarely.
Yeah.
And it's quite, it sort of saddens me a bit because, you know, I've invested most of my life in this sport, and you just see people abusing it. And I don't say anything, you know, unless somebody says something to me. I sort of just keep my mouth shut and I'm the old fella in the corner. Just leave me alone.
It's the best way, safest way.
With his dodgy hips and his broken knees, you know. Have you suffered physically? I mean, I know that you said, and I quote, because it was an interesting quote, you went to have your well-man check.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the well-man check, the doctor said you have to stop or you will kill yourself. And that was in your 40s, wasn't it? So that's not so long ago.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Last year?
Last year or the year before.
The year before.
Yeah, because you'll know yourself, Bob, martial arts gives you a mentality.
Yeah.
And it's that mentality of don't quit, push forward. You know, there's a Japanese proverb that I wear on my
you wear on my
bracelet thing here,
Senshusei, is it?
Which is, it says Senshusei, it's in Japanese, it says Senshusei, and it says Nana Kurobi Yaoki, which means 4 down, 7 times, stand up 8. So it's all about not quitting and taking knocks and coming back. So, you know, I'm 48 now. And I would still,
48. All right, okay.
48, yeah. So I was, up until about 3 years ago, and although I only had 9 fights, I've had so many gym wars. And in Master Lek school, when we sparred, we sparred hard. So I've had a lot of gym wars over the years, and I was getting to like 45, 46 and thinking, these young guys coming up, I'm a little bit slower than I was. Do I want to keep getting hit in the head? Which is an inevitable part of full contact sparring.
Yeah.
My knees were suffering from Japan in particular, my left knee in particular. And these were all starting to take their toll. I didn't go for the well-man check because of that. It's because over 45, you probably should.
Yeah, you just have a quick checkup,
But the doctor at the well-man check, he says to me, I think he asked me about whether I'd had a holiday. And I said, oh yeah, I go on holiday. I said, I like to go to one of the Canary Islands. This was before
you said
lockdown.
In your book, Gran Canaria.
Yeah, Gran Canaria. And I said, what I normally do is, you know, I'll spend some time by the pool during the day, and then in the afternoon, what I'll do is I'll go for an hour and a half run in the blazing heat. I won't take any water. I always take a little bit of money just in case I collapse and I need to get a taxi home. Yeah. And I would just run in the blazing heat.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll be exhausted at night. And he said, if you keep doing that at your age, you are going to kill yourself. And that was a moment where I thought, I'm not 21 anymore.
Yeah.
I need to probably slow down a little bit. It helped with my decision to say, actually, Muay Thai, you've been great to me, but I'm just going to do a bit myself at home, train myself, train my kids. but I'm not going to spar anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on one martial art. I'm not going to go on the crazy runs when I go abroad. I'm going to enjoy my holidays instead of going. And I do a gym session as well, aside from the runs. So it was all getting a bit crazy. And that's because my mentality, particularly from Japan, was in a place where push, hardship.
Yeah.
Which could have hurt me in the long run.
Well, I mean, I can talk from personal experience on that account, because when I was my son's, he had his stag do at the top of Ben Nevis.
Oh wow!
And I was in my 50s.
Yeah.
We ran up Ben Nevis.
Wow.
And I shouldn't have done it because my knees were bad anyway. But my son was like, even my son said, "You don't have to do this." And it's that same mentality. It's like, yeah, no, I will do this.
Yeah.
Ran up Ben Nevis. And what really killed me was actually running down. Yes. And ever since then, my knees have never been the same. And my partner was like, that is what finished you off. I think I was 50, 55. And because you think you're still 19, don't you? You know?
You do, but your body slows down, and you need to do different things.
And the wear and tear is enormous, particularly Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And running and Muay Thai, running on hard surfaces is just horrendous, But
martial arts
we do it.
We do. The great thing about martial arts, it gives you tremendous mental strength.
Yeah.
The downside with martial arts, and I don't know whether there is a martial art that bypasses all of this, but in my experience, I've trained quite a lot of them. You are going to get injuries, and you are going to hurt your body in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Of course,
you want to keep going, and you feel you should keep going, and you don't want to slow down. But that well-man check, I forgot I put that in the book actually.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It made me laugh because I thought I know exactly. I've heard it from medics that I work with.
Yeah.
What do you mean? You're running over the Brecon Beacons with a group of lads?
Yeah.
You're 50. You're 58. Yeah. These are a bit sore.
Master Lek was, bless him. He even when I was like 40, 44, 45, if we ever got somebody new to the gym, or the camp, I should say camp actually, but we used to train in a gym. If we ever got somebody new who came, who'd done some Muay Thai before, and if they ever had a bit of an attitude on them, what he'd always say is there was myself and one other lad, Kaleem, who came up with me, and we used to fight together.
Yeah.
He'd always just call us out by name, and we'd be in the ring, and it'd be full on gym war.
Yeah.
And that had to stop. It couldn't happen anymore.
Well, I still use some of Lek's bizarre press-up exercises that you remember those?
Yeah,
the snake sort of thing. Yeah, brilliant. I still use them to this day. And I always acknowledge Lek. I'll say, okay, guys, right, get in a square. You rest your feet on his shoulders. And they're all going, what? And then when they do it, they're like, oh my God. And
Thai army, apparently.
Oh, I loved it. Army. And the great thing about that exercise was it gets people to work together as a team, which is an important thing. And it kills you. Yeah. I mean, it kills you, Yeah. So I remember Lek stuff fondly. When you said he'd gone back to Thailand, I was like, no. Part of me left.
Yeah, and
I did like the guy. I mean, obviously I wasn't as close to him as you were, but on the few occasions I'd meet him at the BTBC or when he came over to do seminars for me, I just got on with him. He's just an approachable guy.
Yeah, very much so.
I talked to him about Buddhism and that, because he'd been a monk, I believe, for a certain period of time.
Yeah, I think so. I think in Thailand you have a decision to make at an early age. Yeah. I think you either do military, or you become a monk, or you
become a monk for it's either 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years.
Yeah. He did tell me the story decision. One time.
Yeah.
So we he used to bring the amulets back from Thailand. I've got so many amulets and whatnot. But a really nice guy. It's a shame now. In Nottingham, there are some, Muay Thai camps, but, Master Lek leaving has left a really big hole.
Of course. Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah. So that's like your Thai boxing career.
That is. And then, done and dusted.
And then in what made you have this decision in 2006, wasn't it, to go to Japan?
Yes.
I'm right. See, I have read some of this book.
You have read some of it.
2006, and you spent Well, the course is 11 months, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So
And
basically what happened, I went to Japan in 2005, and in
yeah,
2000, it's probably 2002, 2003. One of my friends, I was working for an accountancy firm in Nottingham. One of my mates came round on for a drinking night out. He'd started training in Aikido at this school in Nottingham.
right.
And we're in my apartment. He said, grab me or do something. And he basically did this move, and it kind of knocked me off my feet and took my balance. And I'm like, wow, what's that? He said it's Aikido, and I said, oh, I know a little bit about Aikido. I know about Steven Seagal. I'd watched all his films. You know, he kind of polarizes. You either like him or you don't. But
yeah.
Back in the day, not so much recently, he made some great films, and that was an influence. So I was looking at the time for something else to do, because I wanted to, the thing with Muay Thai, if you get into a street situation, the natural instinct is to punch and kick, knee or elbow. And I was curious about what other things you might be able to do if somebody grabbed you, or, you know, I never did security work or anything like that. But if I'd been on the door, I couldn't necessarily have punched somebody in the head, knock them out, da-di-da-di-da. So I decided to go to this Aikido club, and I got quite interested in it. I got my black belt in Nottingham, the Yoshinkan Black Belt Academy. Interestingly, my friend who introduced me to it, he stopped training, and I carried on.
Yeah.
But at the time, there was a book called Angry White Pajamas.
Yeah, I remember that book, Twigger.
Yeah, Robert Twigger, that was doing the rounds. So everyone was reading it at the Yoshinkan, and I read this book. And this is kind of my personality. I read the book and thought, wow, I didn't know about this 11-month course with the Tokyo Riot Police in Aikido. But now I do know. I know it's going to burn a hole in the back of my brain until I actually go and do it. And I started to ask myself the question, well, could I do it? What if I did it? Do I have the time to do it? And I made the decision that, having got my black belt in the UK, I would go to Japan. I was en route to Australia. I was planning to settle in Australia, but that's another story altogether.
Oh, right.
And stopped in Japan and went to the Hombu Dojo, the head dojo in Tokyo, did some of the basic classes, got some information about this Senshusei course, and decided I'd enroll on it. So in 2006, 1st of April 2006, I started 11 months of grueling training, 5 days a week, 4 sessions a day. So it's 4 hours a day training. Indoctrinated to the dojo, learning Japanese culture. Amazing experience, tough experience, but an amazing experience. And it gave me a different thing, that I got a background in Muay Thai, and I got discipline from Muay Thai, but this took the whole discipline and mental capability thing to a whole new level.
So the Aikido introduced you to sort of Japanese concepts, I guess. The Japanese concepts of the martial way, Budo, Bushido. And you literally give everything up, didn't you?
Yeah.
Go there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had I had a career in recruitment. I had a house, got a car, got a nice life, earning decent money. And I just decided that I was going to work, and I thought, I'm 34. I kind of had my first midlife crisis. I probably had my second towards the end of the book when I came back from Japan. You'll have read about. Yeah. But I thought, well, why not? Why not? I know that opportunity is there. I could sell my house. I could sell my car. I could get on a plane. I could go to Japan. I could teach English for a living. Why not? So one day I decided I would, and then I put the plans in place to do it. And that's what I did.
Did you... ask you a funny question here. Did you at all waver? Did you ever, when you got out there, did you ever think, oh, what have I done?
No, I didn't. Okay. No, because I don't know whether you've ever been to Japan.
Yeah, Yokohama, but a long time ago.
Yeah. It's a bit like, I guess it was kind of similar to the first time I went to Thailand. It's such a different experience. It's such a different culture.
Oh, completely.
All the kind of fear and anxiety about being in a new country and what you're going to do next and how you're going to survive and how you're going to live and all of this stuff, because you're dazzled by the new environment that you're in, you kind of forget about that. And I guess I was fortunate. I didn't realize it at the time, but when I went to boarding school at a young age, I was kind of forcibly removed from my family home and made to live somewhere else. So I kind of got used to being in a different environment and in quite a tough environment. So the decision I had to make in Japan was whether I trained in the Ippan, the general classes, or whether I trained in the Senshusei classes.
Yeah.
And every morning I train in the Ippan classes, and we train on half of the mat. And the Senshusei, and Senshusei means specialist. It basically means somebody who is the lowest form of life in the dojo, has committed themselves to the dojo for this crazy course. And I'd watch the Senshusei, I'd hear the shouting, the screaming. It had more of the feeling of when you first walk into a Muay Thai gym, banging the pads. And I thought, I'm on the wrong end of the mat here.
Yeah.
If I'm in Japan to do Aikido, I want the hardship. And that, when I talk to my wife about, craving hardship, she doesn't necessarily get it.
Most people don't understand that.
No.
You see, most people would be at this end of the mat going, thank God I'm at this end of the mat.
Yeah.
And not that. I'll watch that end of the dojo, but I'm not going to go down there. But you being odd.
yeah, very odd. Yeah.
Have decided, I need that. That's got to, but that you mentioned, going back just a little bit there, you mentioned boarding school. It sort of created an independent spirit, didn't it?
I think it did, because
you had to fend for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, at 13, I went to boarding school. I was a naughty boy. I was terrible.
Yeah, you said, yeah.
and I remember having the tour of the boarding school with the headmaster. All the pupils are really nice and friendly. The headmaster promised the earth, yeah, you can do this, you can do that. And I remember the first day when my parents had dropped me off, we got taken into the house, into the boarding room, and basically that was it. The life they presented, completely different to the life I was about to live. Yeah. I mean, it's. I've never been to prison, thankfully, but it's as close as I can probably imagine without going to prison. You can.
Isn't that something you would like to do?
No, no.
Come on, it's a challenge, Simon. It's a challenge.
No, in fact, I was watching the TV series Cold Feet. I think it was the last series.
All right, yeah.
And one of I can't remember the character's name. He gets sent to prison. And he's in prison, and I think his wife comes to visit him, and she goes, "How are you coping?" And he goes, "Well, it's not too bad, really. After all, I went to boarding school." And I said to my wife,
"You got that,
exactly, because it's regimented. Yeah. You have to do what you're told. Yeah. You do everything to a certain time, and you're kind of housed up with some people you don't want to be housed up with. Let's just say that.
Which I've been in the army.
Yeah,
it essentially it's a bit like being in the military, where you've got a bunch of disparate people with different ideas about things, and you've got a bunch of thugs who are shouting at you constantly. Yeah, and you get bullied, and you'll be getting bullied by, whoever happens to be senior to you. I mean, I went to a secondary...
Sounds like the Senshusei course, that does.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, so I guess it was like coming home for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I never really had a problem with the hardship. I wanted to see how much I could take. What I was curious about at the age of 34, I got a comfortable life, got a good job, and all that other stuff that I've spoken about. I wanted to see if having read Angry White Pajamas, if I went to Japan, could the Japanese break me on the Senshusei course, or could I do it? And I knew I could do it, and I was determined to do it, and I did do it. And when you go through an experience like that, when you're talking about hardship, when you go through hardship, you come out at the end of it a very different person. And if you learn anything along the way, you come out of it as a better person, I think.
Yeah. So whilst you were in Japan, in order to make a little bit of money, you were working for was it the Berlitz school?
Berlitz, yeah, the language school. Yeah. So
did you learn Japanese? Did you pick up
Skoshi dake, which means a little bit only.
Oh, okay.
There you go. That's about the extent of it.
Oh, you burst my bubble. I thought you'd come on here going, "Oh, Zenkudachi konnichiwa," whatever.
Konnichiwa. I can understand more than I can speak. But I like when I first went to Thailand, I learned some Thai so I could communicate, and it's respectful to do that. So I had Japanese lessons, and the teachers, we had 3 classes every day. The first class was run by an international instructor who generally spoke English, but then it was Japanese instructors. So you had to understand some Japanese.
Yeah.
And on my course, every year is different. And mine was the 16th international course. And on my course, they brought in this thing called Zagaku, which was basically a meditation class every week, where you had to sit in that very uncomfortable kneeling position, Seiza.
Oh yeah, good old Seiza.
Yeah, and you had to, which is probably ruined my knees. and you had to, after 2 or 3 weeks of being able to recount a Hansei and Shukan, which is a reflection as to what you could improve on and a habit that you're proud of, we were told we had to do it in Japanese. So I was pretty happy that I knew some Japanese and I could write the alphabet and this, that, and the other. So I think it made my time in Japan more interesting and more enjoyable, knowing at least some of the language, because it definitely did help. And then I was teaching at Berlitz English.
Yeah, and I guess most of the instructions would have been, well, all of the instructions in training would have been in Japanese, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. Particularly the second and third classes, yeah.
I know when I did karate back in the 60s and 70s, all of the Japanese expected you to know everything in Japanese.
Yeah.
There was no forward stance. It was Enkotsudachi,
Yeah.
There was like, everything, all the commands,
Yes,
Hajime,
yeah.
All of
Hajime.
them, they're still, Yame, they're like, they're trapped inside my head. So I can speak karate Japanese very well.
Yeah.
Which I had to do because I remember Noida on a course, Sensei Noida, who was fearsome, and he was known as the Tiger in Shotokan karate. He was one of the first people to come over to the UK in the early 60s, if not the late 50s. And he actually slapped people on a course if you didn't get it right. You don't understand? You don't understand? And this poor mate of mine, he was standing there, and I think he was in like some sort of shikodachi, some sort of horse stance, with his hand out like this, and his fist wasn't in the correct position. It was too low, and he told him to adjust it, and he didn't do it because he didn't understand a word. He said, "You don't understand?" And Derek, my pal, goes, sensei, slapping him in the face like that. I was like, I'm standing there like, shit.
Yeah.
I mean, we were like 16,
Yeah, it'd be terrifying.
Like, we were absolutely terrified and in awe of their ability as well.
Yes.
Their level of discipline, self-discipline, as well as their own training ethic, because they could do it as well. They weren't like some fat slob standing in front of you, do this side kick. They were like, boom.
Yeah, and he just led by example.
This is good.
A Japanese dojo, when I first walked into the Yoshinkan Hombu dojo, the feeling of tension and fear was thick. And we were told very, very early on in the course that whenever we were in the dojo, we should be in a state of fear. You could never relax. And you couldn't. Someone was always on you. And the instructors there, they could dish out the goods as well.
Because you spent 223 days training, didn't you?
I counted them, every single one,
And you remember every single one. And what I'd like to do at this point, because we've done about an hour now, Simon.
Oh, wait, okay.
I love to finish it. It's a really good way to end it. You're about to start this training, and all you can smell is the smell of fear as you enter the dojo.
That's it.
It's a really nice way to end things. And we pick up on the next one where let's talk about, what was going on in this dojo that was so different, the personalities, the people that you encountered. And of course, I guess some people would call it brutality that was being meted out. Yeah. Yeah.
What's just on that, to give people a flavor as to what's come. Obviously, I wrote this book based on a diary that I kept when I was in Japan.
What book is that, Simon?
Suck it up or go home.
Suck it up or go home.
That's it. So I wrote this book based on this diary, and I wrote this story during lockdown, and I put this story out into the world, and I've no idea what feedback I was going to get. And the feedback that I've had has generally been good, but the feedback that I've had in abundance from some of the top Japanese, top sensei, international sensei in the world, is, wow, what a level of hardship in that year. That your year was not necessarily the normal year. You had quite a lot of hardship and quite some difficult characters to deal with. But for me, it was just normal. That's all I knew. So it's been very interesting, but we'll talk all about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that next. So, Simon, I'd like to thank you so much for giving up your time today, mate.
Thank you.
The book, and I'm going to get the title right, okay? Suck It Up or Go Home. I don't know where I got and Go Home. Suck It Up or Go Home by Simon Gray. It's available on Amazon, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And I'm going to put all the details and the links in the description box below.
Thank you.
Go and buy it and help this poor man out. He's suffered. Let's get him some new knees.
Yes, exactly.
Simon,
Yes.
thanks a lot, mate. Thanks
you, Bob.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.